Are you ready to learn from someone who's created businesses out of his expertise on procurement, strategy, and AI? This is the 𝐬𝐜𝐚𝐥𝐢 podcast, where every single week we bring you a lot of amazing experts. And right now on season 3, we're talking to different entrepreneurs who have more than one business, essentially our serial entrepreneurs. And we dive into basically kind of getting to know a little bit about them and how they were able to grow multiple businesses at the same time. I am your host, Lacaba. I run an executive assistant outsourcing agency in the Philippines, and I'm the author of the book 𝐬𝐜𝐚𝐥𝐢, available now on Amazon. And if you're ready to learn from our guest today and to ditch the grind, let's go over and scale you. Now, our guest today is a business strategy consultant, AI automation architect, and procurement leader with over 15 years of experience optimizing supply chains, procurement, and business processes. As the co-founder of Automations24, Paul has helped businesses eliminate inefficiencies by leveraging no-code and low-code automation solutions. His expertise lies in AI-driven workflow, optimization, cost reduction, and business transformation, helping companies scale with agility while staying competitive in a fast-evolving digital landscape. Okay, so guys, please help me welcome our guest today, Paul. Hey, Paul.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to dive into. Of course, as any podcast host would, I stalked you a little bit, but of course, I would love to know your story from you. So, to start us off, walk us through who you had to be to become who you are. Kind of a little bit of a background. We can skip right through also to where you are now, and then we'll go into the middle parts as well later. So, yeah, start off with like who you had to be to become who you are now.
Sure. So my name is Paul Malott, and I grew up in a very small town. I graduated high school with 52 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, and in that environment, right, you start out, believing that your world is this, right? And whatever that is, it expands over time, and that expansion means, you have to be curious and you have to be comfortable with growth. And So I say that because I learned that at an early age, and have targets for where you're headed in terms of growing. And so, Paul, the small town guy, started growing and started going to college, went to university at University of Michigan, and studied project management. Ended up having a 20-year procurement career for Fortune 500 companies, and eventually was in a leadership position, right? What I strived for growing up, and eventually realized through the process of being calibrated or fired a few times, right, in corporate America, that my value add, is within and it has to come out, right? And how it comes out for me is in the form of Automations24, where I am the co-founder of essentially an automation agency that uses my doctoral research and strategy to support in smart automations.
Got it. Very cool. And I have a bajillion and one questions for that. First one is I love the comment of you learned fast to have a target and where you want to go. But tell us, what is procurement? Because to be totally honest, I had to ask ChatGPT what it was. So tell us more of what that is.
Sure. Well, procurement, in my opinion, is the miniature CEO. You represent the supply base in a variety of different challenges, right? And procurement professionals, incorporate supply chain, so that's material management, and also contract negotiations, leverage for buying a particular widget, this pen, for example. And as a procurement manager in, let's say, a corporate environment, you're essentially extremely focused on spend. How much your organization is spending on a particular category, which could be technology, it could be, again, a widget, a component, even a little screw. And as you go through that, right, you manage the supply base and the spend accordingly. And that encompasses a lot of different things. But the reality of it all is it's problem solving, right? You're solving issues that occur in the development of a product or the execution of a product. And that gives you really broad exposure, right? And back to the learning comment, being exposed to so many different gray areas in corporate America and globally, right? Really gives you some resolve, which translates really well into entrepreneurship.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. You explained that a little bit better than ChatGPT did, for sure. ChatGPT does not have your experience. So it's interesting because it's part of like I said, corporate America, or even in the corporate world, that you don't see as much. It's not I realize that it's an important component, but it's more of like very much a behind the scenes, but it's if you take it out, everything else starts falling apart kind of part of it. So thank you for explaining that really, really well. So tell me how you went from that then, and I love that you have a doctorate because that means that you really nerded out on it as well. Tell me how you went from that to your current business. Like how was that translated? Was it something that you saw and you're like, oh, I want to build something on that, or hey, I want to fix that? What was kind of that part of your story?
Sure. So, back to the mini CEO comment, right? When you own what you do, right? Regardless of where you're at and or what position you're in. When you own what you do, you find yourself leading several projects or initiatives that, are either back to solving problems, or changing the way things are done. And I realized, recently, right? It's one of those things that I learned just yesterday, pretty much, that when you're doing it for companies, they have a process that they prefer you do it in, because that process is what supports that organization, right? And that organization delivering that value. And honestly, it was 20 years of frustration with processes that I didn't necessarily agree with, right? Or that you see these kinks in and you need to resolve. And that was how I put the feather in my cap too in the corporate career, and grew as transforming processes really internally. And I started studying productizing services, right? And what that means from a product development standpoint. And really said, okay, no framework out there that these companies are using accommodates for this, right? Accommodates for the way that we are, as consumers, are requiring services now to be very hyper personalized and so on.
Yeah.
And that got me really, deep diving how to change processes and digitize, right? Which soon became artificial intelligence and automations and so on. And basically, I, through the process of researching and doing the homework, right, and having that experience as the mini CEO, said, okay, I think that the way for me to give my value as an entrepreneur is going to be best served through automations. And why? Because I think automations are accessible right now, right? Especially low-code, no-code automations like Make.com, or Zapier or N8N. They're accessible. I think I can use them because I know enough about technology to be dangerous. And I want to upskill. I want to learn that and then deliver my value of process change, via these systems. And turns out I'm pretty good at that, right? I'm good enough to where I had to find people who are better than me to do it so that I could, do other things like run a business. And the cool thing about automations is when you're building your business using automations, you're very cognizant of your time, right, that you're spending on almost every process and task. And so I'm practicing what I'm preaching all the time internally too, right? Yeah. My team and I. So, that's how I got there, and that's how I use it today, right?
Got it. So I love that it is a combination of a lot of the different parts of your story as well. I'm also systems nerd. It's funny. Literally the backbone of how I built my agency is like, hey, we'll help you build your systems, not just an assistant, but like someone who will like document things, because you and I know how important it is. But it's also the same thing of like, it has to be evolving like a human as well, because like we'll find shortcuts, we'll find new tools, we'll find new ways to do it. So tell me more about that journey then of like, as you started the business, as where you are now, and also supporting a lot of these businesses, what has kind of been challenges in that, especially since as someone who's also in the AI space, it's sometimes still a little bit hard to convince people to accept or to understand how automations and AI in general works. What was that journey like for you?
Well, I mean, you said a lot of really important things there. One is continuous learning, right? I mean, I still don't know what I don't know.
Yep.
And there's always because of that, there's like a new daily challenge, right? In the technology space. And there's a lot of smarter people than myself that are driving a lot of really cool things that I want to be a part of. So that's a challenge in and of itself, is to stay on the cusp of what's coming, right? And I try to do that personally through research, right? And execution, and actually getting out there and consulting and solving real world problems. Getting there and understanding where my capabilities are was a real kick in the butt for me, right? Because I made my career changing processes, which means I got really good at identifying problems and then solving them, right? And really good at analyzing internal processes and shepherding other people through them and so on. And what that did to me when I went to automate other businesses in my own business, when you're starting in the quote unquote ideal space, right? The ideal process, it's a learning curve to even go through and have to update it, right?
Yeah.
And then when you expand and you incorporate team members who have different ways of doing things that have similar or better results, or everything, that's also a communication. It's something you have to incorporate, and you have to be, as a entrepreneur, super ready to take, right? You have to not let your feelings get hurt. And that translates directly into the attitude of artificial intelligence today.
Yeah.
Right. When I'm talking to potential clients, depending on the industry, they could be very risk averse to what technology could bring, and in particular in certain service industries too, right?
Yeah.
And that risk aversion is justified, but it's also holding them back. And when you're trying to sell that good thing, right? You're trying to sell value, and there isn't a desire to understand what comes between the seller and the buyer, and that information that needs to be comprehended to accurately understand what you're buying.
Yep.
It's a really hard thing, right? And you have to learn to unfortunately walk away from certain clients because they have a different idea of success. And it doesn't mean they're not going to achieve it, right? But it means that probably they're not ready for my way yet, and that's not neither here nor there, not right or wrong. But I used to get offended by it, right? I mean, seriously, because you, as a business owner, you put your heart and soul into your business, right? And Automations24 is my primary business, but I have a software, SourceFlow.ai, that is procurement software, and I have Paul Malott and Company, which basically supports government agencies and automations, right? And to try to manage all three of those, and if I were to take everybody's comments personally, it would be really painful, right? I'd be a depressed person. Instead, you learn, right? You take the comment, you take the approach, and you adapt to it.
Got it. No, I love that, and it is. Especially the first couple, I remember the first couple of sales calls I did where, I, as an AI consultant, they're like, oh, I don't believe in that. I'm like, huh? How can you not believe in AI? I'm like, but why are you even in this call? Oh, I thought it was something else. I'm like, okay. So it's an interesting cycle that I think everyone who's going into AI is also discovering as they're offering services with AI, is that not really pushback. It's just they don't know what they don't know also. It's just they're not sure how it can actually apply. And a lot of the times it's not even our job to convince them. It's our job to just show them hey, this is what it is. If it's not a match, then it's okay. Maybe a year from now, because how fast everything else in AI is. So I love that you touched on that. With the different businesses that you have, how do you kind of make sure everything is still aligned? How do you make sure between different teams or different types of clients as well that you have? And I can see how everything kind of weaves together. But how do you kind of make sure that there's that feeling hey, we're doing something kind of together, kind of not, where we have different goals, but then we're still kind of under the same umbrella.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. It's about weaving the businesses such that the ecosystems that they exist in promote and support one another.
Yeah.
And what I found, right, is that networking is one of the best ways to ensure that you're on point, right? And what I mean by that is you simply through having really interesting conversations with various people from various backgrounds. I mean, and you know this better than I do. You begin to see things that, you know, you start to know what you didn't know. And that's very helpful, right? And then recognizing as you go through the process of weaving and building the ecosystem, it's really recognizing where you're contributing as a person, right? And how much of that is linked to that that return that your clients are getting from each business unit, right? And how much are you doing in that towards the effort to secure those clients and make them happy, right? And I think the struggle that a lot of business owners have, including myself, is balancing all that out between it all, right? And wearing the different hats. And to me, the most successful thing that I've done in terms of, you know, managing the weave is allowing other people to take control, right? And as a business owner, that's really painful, you know, but it's also a necessity if you should want to scale, right, or grow.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's been honestly the most successful thing I've done, because that's where I learned the most, because it's also where I'm almost forced to adapt certain ways of going about business with each different, you know, business unit. You know, for example, automations they work with one another, obviously, right? They're a shared resource. But when I service exclusively the government with PM and company, that I can tailor everything to that market and keep all those processes clean and clear throughout, you know, from start to finish. And that way that value drive is there the entire time. And the same goes with where I don't necessarily also need the agility that I need in Automations24, where it's essentially industry agnostic, right? You're dealing with data and the transformation of data. And you don't need that really super specific marketing. So it's like, okay, well, we can separate now how we approach business to both of these, focus our efforts, less effort, right? Because we're automating things in the background. You know, we can focus the less effort where we're getting all that return. And the key is review, though, right? If you don't set the target and then start marching to the target and wholeheartedly like live your days, you know, going towards that end of the light at the end of the tunnel, you're going to get confused.
Yeah. True. I love what you touched there on, like, one of the harder parts. You talked about it in two front. One is the network, is like connecting with either potential clients or just learning how to understand how people are. And the second part is like that letting go feeling for business owners is a little bit scary. And it reminded me this joke that I had with my publishing company for my book. And because I jokingly called it, it's title should be outsourcing for control freaks, just because it's so hard for that letting go feeling. And I totally understand, especially if it's born out of your own talent and your mind, because it's even harder to separate it, because it's like, this is my baby.
Yep, you nail it. I call it a halo effect, right? Every business owner that you work with has the halo effect, because you know, the reality is that business came from them. You know, they manifested that business, and that halo is really hard to get off of folks. But once they're able to understand that, basically delineating between having fun and work and why they're working, and, you know, leisure and appreciating different things. Once they understand, we're almost therapists in that way, is what I'm trying to say, right? When we're going through the sales process, right? Because you're add technology into the mix, and you're adding another layer of. It's really hard for people to give away something, not to something they may not trust too, right? If they don't trust technology, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's very real, but it's also very dangerous, right?
Yeah, that's true. And it is that it's funny because it's both sides. Going into a little bit of like the AI automation is like it's both sides where some people are scared of like losing their data, but most people, not even some people, don't even have enough data to feed the AI or to put into the automation as well. So it is a little bit of a funny, not double-edged sword, but like two sides of the same coin where and there is that fear, and it's also making sure like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is where it'll be. It's not that we're doing this with your data. It's kind of just assuring them as everyone else is going through that same wave of like, what the heck are we doing here? What is businesses going to be evolving into, which is the kind of the everyone else is thinking. So with your businesses, what's kind of where do you want it to go, I guess, is a good question that I do want to ask, because I don't always talk to a lot of people who already built an AI business, so that's why I'm really curious. So for you, where do you see either all three of your businesses, or it might be 4 or 5, but where do you see it kind of going? Where do you want it to go also?
Oh, well, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. I try to reflect on this often, right? I mean, we talked about having a goal and then, driving to that. I want a sustainable organization that operates in my image, and when I say that, I mean it, and I want a driven company that is problem resolution oriented, that solves those problems with simple, practical solutions. And how do I try to get there? I mean, I live and breathe these solutions for these people, and I'm probably micromanaging it right now. As I reflect on it and what we're talking about, and I need to practice what I'm preaching a little bit more and get out of it, because what I want is an enterprise that's built on sustainable technology development. Yeah. And I believe when we talk about where things are going and all that unknown with companies and the structure, I believe augmented intelligence is better used for AI, right? Saying AI and augmented intelligence is better because AI is not necessarily taking your jobs, it's the people who are using AI, right? And these companies that are very effective today, digitally and digitally mostly, they're smaller and smaller, and their values are higher and higher. Yeah, I aspire to be one of those companies, right? Whether it be Automations24 or PM Company, or SourceFlow, right? That where I can flex my domain expertise. But again, you get there by curiosity, right? I always like to say, embrace what my children embrace, right? Don't stick scissors in the outlet in the wall and shock yourself, but be curious, and be smart and curious. And that's how I think you maintain the agility. And honestly, smaller companies today, and in history, they've been the ones that have innovated. Yeah. They've been the innovation companies. They've been the ones that drive these changes. And I think we're fortunate to live in an opportunity right now where we have the opportunity to try that, right? To be a part of a big change. Yeah. It's
funny because like there's so many, of course, not really disadvantages, but just so much to climb when you're a smaller, newer business. But it's also easier to like pivot. Like I remember, like for us, when AI came out, because we were like 2.5 years old and 3 years old, I was easy to pivot of like, oh, we're AI enabled executive assistants. But then I watched like our competitors who were like had buildings or like had big offices. It was harder for them to make that shift just because like everyone was so used to, again, the processes basically that are not as versatile or human oriented basically towards it. So I love that you touched on that, and you've given a lot of really good insight as well on where you're seeing the future and where you're seeing it evolve. So I love that you share that. Thank you. So as we're seeing the future, as we're going there, a question that I love asking and on the 𝐬𝐚𝐥𝐢𝐧𝐠 podcast is like, if we were to, as AI is evolving, if we were to duplicate a perfect Paul, so like 20 of you, 30, 50, a whole army, 300 of you, how would you like to impact the world with kind of basically that much influence? That you have like many of you who'd be on stage at the same time or creating content at the same time. What would that look like for you?
It's very scary. I mean, to have that kind of order of magnitude and command the kind of respect that I think that I strive for, and I think a lot of people do. It's a very I hope it's humbling for people, right? Mm-hmm. And I hope it's also the way that kind of power, for lack of a better term, they keep it balanced and appropriate, right? If I had 3,000 of me running around, I hope that I'd have the best, most supportive friends, right? Yeah. In your personal tech stack in the future, right? I mean, I think 5 years from now, even, we might have very customizable personal type tech stacks, right? Yep. That could mean all kinds of different things, but I mean, agentic AI running about doing things for us individually. I hope that there's a miniature Paul Malott out there that's supporting in strategy and long-term vision, because I may not be the best in the trenches, but I'll get dirty in the trenches, right? And you have to when you're a business owner. You got to roll the sleeves up, get dirty, but you also have to have that vision. And I hope that I can in the 3,000 of me and everyone's personal tech stack, so maybe more like 8 billion, let's say that, we're doing helpful things and supporting people in their vision, right? Yeah. And that vision is how they're using technology to better their day. And I'll give you a really interesting, example, leisure, right? When you think about leisure today, we're Netflixing and chilling, right? And we're a variety of things, whatever. I read. That's different than 120 years ago, where leisure was like, I just got done chopping the log for the tree, and I got to put it in the fire to stay warm before I fall asleep and do it all again tomorrow. Perhaps we're using these technology stacks so that we can have more leisure and enjoy what life has given us, right? Family, right? All the things we're blessed for. Perhaps that's what we can also use technology for, and it's not just let's increase productivity to increase productivity. Yeah. So I'd like to think, the friend approach, right? I'd like to think Paul's there to, my digital twin is there to remind you sometimes, work hard, party hard,
I love that. It's and I love what you said, that also, that it's not just increasing productivity for the sake of it. It's doing things or freeing ourselves up enough to do the things that we actually want to do. And I love that your use of, I've never heard of someone say that, your personal tech stack, basically. That's a really good way of also seeing that, because like right now, so many, as you know, there's so many tools, and we don't take the time to audit the tools that we have in our life also. So that's a really good way. Okay, so I hope we have a PM bot somewhere in the future who's helping that.
Me too.
That strategy. Very cool. Well, Paul, how can people find out about you? How can people connect and follow you along your journey?
Well, www.automations24.com. That's the primary website. But I'm also on LinkedIn, Paul Malott, right? The name Malott. That's 2 T's, not 1. And Automate with A24 on most of the socials, right? Instagram, TikTok, and so on.
Amazing. Thank you again for your time today. And looking forward to seeing more of your future come alive.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on. It was a pleasure.
Again, all of Paul's links will be found below, so you guys can go ahead and check out and connect with him. And of course, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button right there. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it wherever you are, I would love to hear from you guys one way or the other. And if you still haven't yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the episodes on the Scale You podcast. Now, I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and with that, small steps matters, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!